Today's video I'm going to shed a little light on front end work on this 68 fastback here. And what I mean by front end, I mean the shock tower assemblies and the rad support, which I'll go around and show you them. I prepped them already. So basically in this video I'm going to show you a little bit of what I do to hang it, and then what I'm going off of to measure and spec everything out to where I know that it's correct and straight before I would start welding it. So if you're doing something similar like this, it's not as hard as it looks scary, just because there is no front end on it right now. But in reality, it's only in entirety 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces, and the whole front end is done here. Not fenders or anything like that, but your structural pieces. So I have everything laid out, ready to go and set it up. Shock tower assemblies left and right, rad support, the braces here for the bottom for the strut rods, and then the apron extension pieces that will go onto the cowl. So basically what I'm going to do, I'll set the GoPro up and you can just check it out. I'm going to hang everything in place, not spot on or anything like that. I'm just going to get it up in the air where it's supposed to be before everything gets drawn tight, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing to get everything straight, because sometimes I use some ratchet straps to pull things in different directions and stuff like that. There's a lot of measuring to do before you would weld any of this, but really, like I said, it's only 7 pieces. The main pieces are just these 3 here, which will slide right into the frame rail in the front, will slide right into that floor support and butt up against the firewall. And yeah, pretty straightforward, just a lot of measuring. So I'm going to go ahead and stick everything in place, and then I'll tell you what I'm going off of to measure everything out in the front end to make it straight. Alright, so you can see how easy and quick those 3 pieces just go into place, because it's already set up and designed to just fit into each other, and boom, it's together. But it's far off from being aligned, and there's a lot to do to make sure that it is aligned. And a lot to do meaning just measurement wise, and twisting and tweaking until you got everything correct. And I'll break down some of the things that I look at here whenever I'm doing the front ends. Because there's sometimes some curveballs that get thrown at you, which is example of this car, which I've never had before, but just from doing it, I don't know how many times these front end panels, I know certain things to look for, and when something looks out of place, and I'll show you that here. Your fender holes, your mounting holes for your fender, are in a line here on top of this, and this is a 1-piece panel that's already pre-welded. Looking down your holes for that fender, they are straight in a line. This side, you know, I pulled it out of the box, looks good. And before even sticking this one up to it, I thought that looks a little odd, and it's odd. It's throwing off my measurements already. You look down this first panel, they're going at an angle this way slightly. It's going that way, and then it kicks back, following back to the cowl. So it looked out of place to me, and now that I have it up in place and I took a couple quick measurements, I know that it's off, which is just something with these reproduction panels that every once in a while you run into things like this, or you got to trim certain things off. There's a couple things that I've already trimmed on this panel that I didn't show you, because if I showed you everything, these videos would be hours and hours long. One thing that I always have to do on these panels is trim a little extra off this trailing end here, because it never fits underneath the cowl like it's supposed to. So before I even stick it up there, I know that for every one of these aprons. I trim that off so it fits underneath there. And then also usually on this passenger side, the curve here at the firewall is never correct, and it'll hit the firewall before it's allowing it to go into place correctly. So I have to bend that out of the way a little extra until I get it up in place, and then I can hit that spot back and meet it. But there's just stuff like that with all of these reproduction panels generally, which you wouldn't know if it's your first time, so it may throw you off. And that's when people get frustrated with these things, but that's just how the aftermarket panel world is now. It's a shame, but at least the metal is usable that you can build cars out of. So I'm not complaining. It's just a normal routine for me with these things. So to give you a little insight on things that I'm measuring to line these up, that was just one thing. For instance, those holes for your fender should be aligned. It's not, I can't get this apron over far enough to where I need to, and if I do pull this over, it throws off my back where it's meeting the firewall. So there's a bunch of signs that let me know that that's wrong. My distance between the edge of this apron over to the edge of this apron is not far enough, because of that's not allowing me to push it over. So this side is fairly good. But everything's measuring out close to where it needs to be. It just needs drawn in. Measure off of the end of your cowl, especially if you didn't change it yet, before you tear any of your car apart. I take a lot of measurements off the tip corner of this cowl. So from that point, say out to the end of the rad support. That's an awesome measurement that you need to know when you're putting these cars together. Also cross measurements, say from that point out to your fender mounting hole on that front corner, and then vice versa to the opposite corner. You can even go off of things like, if you're not changing your roof yet, take your window molding clip pin, measure off of there out to that corner, or from there to the front corner on the same side. All kinds of measurements like that are things that you need, especially cross measurements, because that'll tell you if your front end is leaning, favoring one way or the other, which would throw all your front end off. Will throw off your alignment, will throw off all your fender gaps, and you'll be really kicking yourself if you have your front end welded together and then you find that out later. Like right now, my front end is leaning this way. It may not look like it on camera, but whenever I'm taking my measurements I take a measurement off of the lip of this inner rocker out to the front corner of this frame rail. This side is a closer number than what the other side is, meaning that it's pulled in this direction. And then also my cross measurements from my cowl corners out or off, favoring that it's leaning towards me right now. And it's just a lot of work just to pull things in the right direction and keep measuring until you got things right. Another quick tip that I'll give you, because you can fight this panel, because it's a big panel and you're pushing against your firewall that's in place and your floor supports that are in place. They do have a little bit of give in them, which is also a reason why I did not weld my cowl or the firewall to my floor pan yet, because if I need to bring that firewall in or out to meet the floor, the frame rail, it has some give to it that I can get everything in the front end in place before I weld that floor pan to the firewall. So there's a lot of information coming to you. It's a little overwhelming, especially if it's your first time, but just keep measuring. The tip I was getting at was ratchet straps. If I need to, say, pull the frame rail this direction a little bit, it helps me that I have this floor pan that I go off of, because I have a lip right here. I'll hook a ratchet strap right here, take it up into that hole where your front valence is mounting, and I can ratchet it and pull this frame rail towards me. Basically like what a frame machine's doing. It's, you hook up to it and it's pulling things in the direction you need. Or if you need the frame rail to go back into the car more, you can hook a ratchet strap to that hole and back to maybe a floor pan hole back there, and it'll draw that frame rail back in. Ratchet straps are a huge help in this part right here. I'll definitely be using ratchet straps to get it in the place that I need. And I'll leave once I have it strapped in place and all my measurements spec out, I'll leave the straps on, weld it completely, because you don't want to lose that location. So, trying to think of other measurements, just all along the lines, say in between the aprons on both sides, the back aprons, between the distance between, a little helpful hint from your cowl side panel into where this apron meets the firewall. You can see I have a little mark right there. It's roughly at 7 1/4 inches in is where that's supposed to be. You can see how far off this side is. It's probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch off, while the other side is exactly where it needs to be, which would leave you with a measurement of where this should be from this apron to that face of that apron. That should be around 40 inches. It's just lots of measurements like that. So if you have a car that's whole when you start and you're replacing it to this depth, take all these measurements, take cross measurements, even measurements you don't even think you'll need, take the measurements. So lots of information to know on doing these. It's 3 pieces here that I just stuck on, but it's very critical in alignment of the vehicle in the end. Like I said, if your front end is tilted one way or the other, it's going to throw off your fenders, it's going to throw off your alignment, it's going to throw off everything. So even if this is your first time or second time, third time, and you're still skeptical on it, screw everything together with some self-tappers or something like that, and then just mock up your front end, your fenders. If you have your doors on, I could put doors on right now if I needed to. Mock up your fenders, hood, see if everything is aligned before you weld. That'll help you out, save you time rather than you weld it thinking that it's right, you find out it's wrong. So lots of things to cover. Hope this helps someone. That's the purpose with these videos here, is to help people that are maybe doing this themselves, or if you're just interested in watching the process in these Mustangs that I'm doing here. I'll do more in-depth here, or like I said on the other videos, on my Boss 302 shell that I'm going to be doing after this shell, because it's one of mine, and I'll set up the cameras and I'll show you the processes of me ratcheting everything together. You see me bust out the tape measure, checking everything. But this is a customer's car, so I'm going to keep cranking. Just thought this might help someone here. It just took me a little bit to make this video today, but hopefully it helps someone. So thanks for watching this video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Leave a comment. I try to reply to as many comments if there are questions as possible. And thanks for watching the video. See you in the next one.